How did the French and Indian War lead to the American Revolutionary War? After the French and Indian War, Britain had a huge war debt that they had to pay off, resulting from the war. But how could they pay it off, they thought. But suddenly it popped into their minds. They could impose heavy taxes on the sugar the colonists were trading. But of course, this is from a government's perspective. Now think about it in a colonist or civilian's perspective living under a government. Who would be happy to pay a huge tax to a government? Of course the answer is obvious. Nobody. So the colonists were very angry. This taxation on sugar also insulted them because by doing so, the colonists believed that their rights as Englishmen were denied. Many colonists believe that since they are not directly represented in the parliament, any laws affecting them were a denial of their rights as Englishmen, and in this case was the Sugar Act, a revenue-raising act passed by the Parliament on April 5, 1764. So, the colonists formed their main argument of no taxation without representation. This was a slogan during the 1750s to the 1760s, and was considered as the starting point of where the idea of breaking away from England had started. Because many colonists disapproved this Sugar Act, they eventually got rid of it through protests, which leads me to my next point. Why were the colonists able to get rid of the Sugar Act from Britain through protests? Wasn't Britain very strong and was able to suppress them? Sadly, no. Because of the French and Indian War, Britain had a huge debt, which made their economy very weak. This caused Britain unable to afford to be losing trade with America, since they had to pay back their war debts. Because if the trade between Britain and America had stopped, it basically meant that the merchants' primary sources of exporting goods will end. And if British merchants were hurt, the whole British economy was hurt. So, the main idea was because Britain's economy wasn't strong enough to afford to further lose trading opportunities, the colonists' actions were very effective due to Britain's current economic state. But of course, tensions were already building between Britain and the colonists. Eventually, what really caused tensions to rise was the Boston Tea Party. The colonists decided they would see none of the tea leave the ship. So, a group of colonists dressed as American Indians boarded the ship at night and threw the tea overboard into the harbor, ruining all of it. Of course, this made the king very mad, so he revived a very old law where British soldiers were required in every household. Many colonists were mad, so the first Continental Congress was born. In this Congress, 55 delegates representing 12 of the 13 colonists, because Georgia withheld, argued back and forth as to whether or not they should separate from Britain for killing their people, firing cannons on their cities, and closing down Boston's seaports. So, the Declaration of Rights and Grievances was written and sent to Britain. Sadly, during that time, tensions was far too high for the king to respond favorably. The colonists began to arm arms and prepare for what they felt was an inevitable battle with the oppressive British army, which eventually led to the first battle because tensions broke. The battles of Lexington and Concord, which is the first battle of the American Revolutionary War. This is how the French and Indian War eventually led to the American Revolutionary War.